Hello and welcome to an introduction to Ayurveda. If we haven't met, my name's Michelle Patino. I am a registered yoga teacher since 2016. Why won't my slide advance? There it goes. I also have an AS degree in athletic training and sports medicine, and I am an Ayurvedic health counselor. So that's why I want to talk to you about Ayurveda. In our slideshow today, I'm going to be giving you the definition of Ayurveda and telling about where it came from. I'm also going to share some of its philosophical concepts as well as the science involved. And I'll also share how you can recognize components of these concepts in yourself and in friends and family, and what to do with the information, really, including, but not limited to, bringing greater balance and wellness into your life. So thank you for joining me here today. Ayurveda. It originated over 5,000 years ago. Can I move this up out of the way? There we go. Originated over 5,000 years ago from the Indian subcontinent, and it's referred to as the mother of all medicine. The definition, let's get the slide to advance, there we go, literally translates to science or knowledge of life. And it's based on the same scriptures, the same ancient texts as yoga. So they're considered to be sister sciences. Now, many don't realize that yoga is actually for the mind, where Ayurveda is more for the body. And let me explain that a little bit more. The ancient practice of yoga is really meant to help quiet the mind. It's different steps that you're taking that leads you to a practice of meditation and quieting the mind. And so the third step is the actual practice of postures. We call it asana practice. And so in that third step of yoga, that's where we're getting the body ready to be able to sit down to meditate. That's what yoga is really about. So when we're practicing all these postures and stretches and strength moves, it's not to get the body in shape per se. It's just a fortunate side effect. We're finding ways to get the ants out of our pants and sit still for meditation. So that's why yoga is really intended for the mind. Ayurveda is for the body because it helps to support the body's practices. It helps to support the body so your body can meditate, so that your body can work and live in life. Whatever your spiritual practices might be, Ayurveda is designed to help your body get the job done, whatever it may be. Okay. So it looks like, so Ayurveda, we could say, is the physical side of yoga, but really they work together in harmony to create that mind, body, spirit approach to health and well-being. They really do belong together. And in fact, yoga practices hold many of the therapies that Ayurveda uses to bring balance and healing to the body. So they really do belong together. And a little quote here from Dr. Halpern, my teacher at the California College of Ayurveda. He says, Ayurveda is not merely a science of disease prevention. It's a complete medical science that aims at healing disease or imbalances within the body. Like all medical sciences, it understands disease in terms of cause, symptoms, and treatment. So, cause of disease. I went ahead and just looked up the definition of disease in the dictionary, put it right here on the slide for you. Disease is a condition of the living animal or one of its parts that impairs normal functioning and typically manifests by distinguishing signs and symptoms. Merriam-Webster said this. So in Ayurveda, we see disease as imbalance. And we're going to talk about the doshas in a little bit. And when they are out of balance, this is what causes disease in the body. Now, even deeper than that, the ancient rishis, the ancient wise men of yoga understood that disease was everywhere, and they wanted to understand how to how to get rid of disease, how to help mankind in its suffering. So they thought long and hard at what the causes of disease are. And of course, it's going to be different thought than we typically think here in Western society, in Western medicine. So the first cause of disease, according to the ancient wise men, was misuse of the senses. Now, what are our senses? Excuse me. Our senses are how we take in the impressions of the world, okay? Taste, sight, sound, touch, and smell. That's how we experience the world. Yeah. Well, now what's significant about this is that they are, as a gateway to the body, our senses bring in the energy of the outside world and it becomes us. So the most obvious example, eating food. When you take in food, your body breaks it down. It uses the nutrients, it uses the molecules in the food that it needs to build tissue, to do what your body needs to nourish you. And it gets rid of the stuff that it doesn't need, basically. So what happens if we're putting in harmonious food as opposed to disharmonious food? If you're putting in harmonious food, you're going to build strong tissue, you're going to build healthy muscle, good clear fluids in your body. If you're bringing in disharmonious foods, processed foods, things with a lot of preservatives, well, then that's what you're bringing into your body, and that's disharmonious. That's how disease manifests in the body. Same thing with sight. You can see junk sight, violence. Who wants to take in that impression and let that become a part of them? I know myself, I can't even watch like gore anymore. I'm like I can feel it in my body. My cells don't like that prana, don't like that energy coming in. It can happen with smell. Think about it. You can have junk smells, junk touch, right? There's a difference between harmonious and disharmonious touch. So in all of the senses, we have to make conscious choice to be careful of what we're bringing in through our senses, because that energy becomes us and it can manifest into disease if we're not careful. The second cause of disease that the ancient wise men saw was failure of the intellect. So what do we mean by intellect? Get a little deep here. We're talking about the ego self. All right. So we have our ego self that identifies with me. Okay. My ego self, my Michelle, is a mom, is a yoga teacher, is a female. Okay. This is how I see myself in the world. Just small examples. The ego is designed to, protect you in the world, to help you find food and a mate. The ego seeks pleasure and tries to avoid pain. Now, the ego is also pretty much what runs the show. We also have a wise voice in our head. I'm sure you've experienced that little quiet voice on your shoulder that says like, you know what, maybe we should do this a different way, or maybe you don't want to do this, or maybe you should go ahead and do that. But the thing is that wise inner voice, the voice is really quiet. It's very quiet. The ego voice is very loud. And so our intellect can be tricked in a way. It fails because it's listening too deeply to the ego voice and not considering the input from that wise inner voice that we need, that really is interested in our best interests overall, not just in the moment, not just what's in our face. Yeah. So failure of the intellect, the ego will get attached, and Ayurveda and yoga, they help with that. They help to create that distance in attachment, to lessen that attachment. Yes. So failure of the intellect, little bleep there in my thought. Third cause of disease, time and motion. Okay. And they are intrinsically connected, time and motion. And there's two kinds of time that we're talking about here. There's linear time, which we can't do anything about. Okay. Linear time is the ticking of the clock, the movement of the sun and the moon, and the days will pass, the time will pass. There's absolutely nothing we can do. But there's also biological time. And that is basically how you age, and it's determined by your levels of stress. So if you think about this example, especially if you're older like me, think of the people that you went to high school with. So I'm 50 years old, almost 50 years old. And I can think back at the people that I went to high school with. And if I were to see them now and we were standing next to each other, somebody in my same grade, someone else who's 50 years old, what are the chances that we're both going to look like the same age? It's not very likely that we're going to both look exactly the same age because we all age at a different rate based on the amount of stress that we're under, based on the way that we take care of ourselves. And some genetic factors will be involved. But you do have a lot to say in how quickly or slowly you're aging. And so Ayurveda teaches this. Yoga brings these concepts to the forefront of how we are causing stress in our lives, how we are moving too fast, and what we need to do to slow down. Okay. Motion is movement. And to balance all that motion out, which is what we talk about a lot in Ayurveda, bringing balance by using opposite qualities, we want to bring in stillness. So time and motion causes disease, causes aging. We're going to bring in the opposite quality and bring in balance. I mean, stillness in order to balance it. So that's what they saw as the three primary causes of disease in Ayurveda. Beyond that, the ancient rishis saw a primordial cause of all disease. And that is basically forgetting that we're spiritual beings in a physical vehicle. They call this forgetting our true nature as spirit, forgetting that we're not our thoughts, getting wrapped up in the ego drama is basically the fundamental cause of all disease, according to Ayurveda. Because when we forget our true nature as spirit, when we get wrapped up in the drama of the ego and the illusion of the world, it causes the mind to move, okay? Causes thoughts, okay? When the thoughts are moving, then the intellect can fail, right? So there's two causes of disease right there. When the intellect fails, we misuse our senses, right? And this causes the disturbances in our physiology. It causes disturbances in our doshas. We're going to talk more about those. And the suffering and disease are going to be the result. So that's how Ayurveda sees the primordial cause of all disease. We want to bring in the opposite, svastha. This is the Sanskrit word for health. It essentially means that we're seated in ourself. It's about good self-esteem, having the ability to remember our true nature as spirit. Not that that happens all the time, it's a practice, but we're able to rest in a self-abiding state where the body and mind are at ease and in a natural harmony. That's what we're looking for when it comes to healing in Ayurveda. So this reflects that Ayurveda, though, it's a practice of personal responsibility and conscious choice making. That's what we need. That helps us remember our true nature of spirit and quell the ego drama in the mind. So in Ayurveda, health is determined not only by the physical body, it's mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's energetic. And so all the tendencies have to be taken into consideration. Oh, and then the root here, svastha, the root meaning sva is your own self. Sta is to be situated. So situated in your own self, good self-esteem is good health in Ayurveda. Now, the 5 elements, if you can tell, that's what's hiding behind there. The 5 elements. The 5 elements are the basis for Ayurvedic knowledge, okay? Now that we've looked at the history, the causes of disease, let's look at the concepts that Ayurveda uses to see and work through the world, okay? So the basis for Ayurvedic knowledge, as we have listed here, are the 5 elements, the Pancha Mahabhutas, as we say in Sanskrit, and they are ether, air, fire, water, and earth, okay? The 5 elements represent the way in which the ancient wise men understood the world around them, okay? They concluded that everything in nature is made up of a combination of these 5 elements. Everything in nature will have a combination to whatever degree. And that means us. We all have some combination of these elements. And so, what do the elements mean? They build, sorry, excuse me. I'm looking at the wrong section of my notes here. Okay, so because we have this unique elemental balance in each of us, we are going to express certain qualities based on the percentage of each of these elements in us. And when we understand a person's balance of the elements, we can work to bring them into balance. So when you're conceived from your parents, when sperm meets egg, boom, your combination of elements is decided at that point. And then the world kind of changes you, you'll have different effects. But in order to really know where you need to be to get back into your own true constitutional balance, we have to figure out how these lie in you. And we'll talk more about that. But let's get into what each of these mean now. So like we said, they're all representations. And why won't my slide advance? There it goes. So they are all representations in the natural world. So in the natural world, ether is the idea of empty space. Because it's empty space, it has certain qualities that describe it, right? So just not going to get really deep into it, but I want you to understand that there are words that describe ether, that make ether what it is. And if you get a feeling of these words, cool, light, dry, mobile, dull, soft, subtle, flowing, smooth, and clear, we get an idea that there's nothing much going on there with ether. It is empty space. It's the most subtle of the elements. It's the most difficult to perceive. The ether is represented in the body by the spaces between things. The spaces between things. Ether holds space for the other elements. Ether in the mind is the consciousness. If you have a lot of ether in your natural constitution, you'll have these qualities that we see here. You're going to be a little bit more of a subtle person. You're going to be able to read between the lines more. You'll have more subtle jokes. You'll have a lighter, drier sense of humor. But also because there's not a lot of depth to ether, you might be very flighty in your personality. You might forget things easily. So that is what the element ether is about. Air is the idea of motion. So in the natural world, there we go. In the natural world, air is the only element with the innate ability to move. Air is about motion. Air represents motion. Okay, so no other element moves without the assistance of air. The tide, the waves are water and air together. An earthquake, that's air moving the earth. Okay, so air's qualities are similar to ether, but not exactly the same. It's cool, light, dry, mobile, sharp, hard, subtle, flowing, rough, and clear. So those qualities make me think of a butterfly or a hummingbird even. If you have a lot of air in your natural constitution, well, physically, you're going to be more likely to not sit still. Okay, you'll have longer body parts because there's motion there. You're not going to be stable and brief. There's going to be longer arms, longer legs, a tendency. Also, in the body, air is also seen in the movement of the joints, the limbs, the movement of circulation, the heartbeat, the movement of your digestive system, food going through the system. So air is all about motion. Okay. The third element, fire. So fire is the idea of light, heat, and transformation. It's the only element with heat. So you can't have heat without fire present. Okay. Now its qualities are warm, light, dry, mobile, sharp, hard, subtle, flowing, rough, and clear. This makes me think of maybe a cheetah running or a panther running. Okay. Fire is all about that transformation, about getting things done. So people who have a lot of fire in their constitution, well, they'll be about getting things done, transforming, but also a certain amount of intensity. They are doers, they are fixers, but they also have a certain light to them. See, one of fire's dharma is to be seen. So people with a lot of natural fire are natural attractors, okay? Fire is seen in the body, in our digestive system. It's also in our skin as it digests what goes onto our skin, and it's in our eyes. It's in the mind because it's the only element with innate heat. It is all about transformation, digestion. Okay. So, yes, if you have more fire, you're going to have a higher digestive system too. You'll have a higher metabolism, and you'll tend to run warmer too as a person, the kind of people that just throw the blankets off in the middle of the night. The fourth element, there it is water. Okay, and water is all about cohesion and flow, going with the flow. It is the only element with innate moisture. No other element can be wet without fire. So its qualities are going to be cool, heavy, moist, stable, dull, soft, obvious, flowing, smooth, cloudy. This kind of makes me think of a whale. It's got more character to it. It's obvious, it's flowing. Okay. Water in the body is seen in the fluids, the plasma, breast milk, all the fluids of the body. In the mind, water is compassion. Water is sweet emotion. Okay. Water is about fluidity too. So if you have a lot of water in your natural constitution, you're more likely to be a sweet person. You're more likely to be very compassionate. You're more likely to be very go with the flow. But water is also about cohesion. So if you have a lot of water, you could have a tendency to get attached to things. And that could be a problem. As we talked about, one of the causes of disease has to do with becoming attached to your experience in the world. So water, number 4 of the elements. And then the 5th one, earth. That is the idea of solidity, stability. It's the most dense and stable of all the elements. The animal that I think of is an elephant. Okay, if we look at those qualities of cool, heavy, dry, stable, dull, hard, gross, dense, rough, and cloudy, right? Earth element is incredibly difficult to move. The air element is very difficult, has a very difficult time moving earth. It's a lot easier to move earth, to move it in the mind as opposed to in the body. Not that it's easy to move it in the mind, but the air can affect the mind faster. So earth in the body is represented by it's all the physical structures, okay? All the physical structures. Earth in the mind is that sense of stability, solidity, your ability to make a decision and stick with it. This could mean, though, if you have a lot of earth in your constitution, you could have tendencies toward stubbornness. But at the same time, with having this stable nature, this earth in your constitution, you might be the kind of person that people tend to rely on because you are pretty stable. They might go to you for regular consultation or just a shoulder because they just know that you'll be there. And especially if you have a lot of earth and water together, then you are definitely the go-to person because you're the non-judgmental shoulder that someone can cry on, that someone can just voice out to if you have those high elements high in your constitution. So, putting it together, these elemental qualities here, they are the basis for understanding. Where are we going with the slides? There it is. So it's the qualities, those descriptive words, they're the basis for understanding the elements themselves. And they're going to lead to understanding the nature of a person as well as to heal their disease. Okay. So the qualities are basically descriptions of the elements. So we know what each element's like, and we can use opposite qualities to bring balance when needed. Okay. So if you have too much ether in your constitution, ether is already cold and dry. If you have too much, you're going to be too cold and too dry. And how do we balance that out? Well, we're going to look for some heat and we're going to look for some moisture. So if you have too much ether in your constitution, we're going to add fire and water. And we'll talk about how we're going to do that later. Same thing with air. Air's tendency is cold and dry, just like ether. We're going to bring in opposite qualities. Likewise, if we're looking at heavy and light, you see fire is the only hot, water is the only moist element, water and earth are the only heavy elements. So if I have too much earth going on, if I'm cold and dry and heavy, I need to bring in warmth, moisture, and lightness. Same goes when we add stable versus mobile. And you see how we're building the elements, explaining their qualities. Now, unstable, well, let me start with air is mobile. Air is the only one that's mobile, okay? Water and earth are stable, okay? Water follows the path of least resistance, okay? That's how it moves, by either gravity pulling it, air pushing it. Fire and ether, they provide no resistance to air. They get pushed around, so they're considered unstable. And so they will need stability still to balance them out. Okay, they can't move on their own, but they are unstable. Now, this leads us to the three doshas. The doshas, all right. So the doshas are biological forces that govern our body's homeostasis, and they live in the digestive system, okay? The word dosha literally means faulty, it means imbalance, but they only cause problems when they're functioning abnormally, when they're out of balance, okay? They're dynamic. They go through stages of rise, peak, and retreat, like the tide. When they go out of balance, it's because they can't retreat and they can't go back into their natural cyclic tide, okay? This, when they are not able to retreat, the dosha will leave the home in the digestive system and spread into the body and cause disease. Okay. Their names, well, their names are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Okay. When the balance of the doshas is maintained, which is what Ayurveda teaches, it teaches you to keep your doshas in balance. They maintain the health of the body. Okay, they guide all of the body processes, which is basically homeostasis. Homeostasis. They run your blood pressure, your respiration rate, your heart rate, your body temperature, hormone release, so that you know when it's time to wake up and go to sleep, when it's time to eat, all of it. Okay. Excuse me. All right. So, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, their names, they are each made of two of the elements here. And we all have a unique blend of all three within us. Okay. We have to because they run our digestive system. Vata dosha is made of air and ether elements. And you remember those qualities that we discussed earlier? Those are present in the Vata dosha. So just a few of them listed here. Vata is cold, light, dry, and mobile. Vata lives in your large intestine and colon area. So think of the qualities, especially mobile, where we're moving things through the digestive system, okay? Dry, when your waste goes through your large intestine, your body is absorbing, doing its final absorption of the water that's in your system, ideally, when your system is running correctly. So it's lightening you up, and Vata is naturally cold. Pitta dosha is made of fire with a little bit of water so that it doesn't burn itself out. Because it's got fire, it lives in your stomach and the top of your small intestine, where the digestive fluids are present and where your body is absorbing the greatest part of your vitamins and minerals. It's your hydrochloric acid. It's also highly present in your liver. So the qualities of pitta are very similar to those of fire. It's hot, it's light, it's a little bit moist because there's a little bit of fire there, and it is unstable because there's not enough water to make it stable. Okay. The kapha dosha is made of water and earth, and its qualities are going to follow along with that. It's cold, it's heavy, it's moist, and it's stable. The kapha dosha lives in the upper part of your stomach, where your digestive fluids are there protecting the stomach from the hydrochloric acid. The kapha is also in your mouth, that your saliva. So if you think about it, kapha has that cooler moisture that is protective. It's that protective lining in your esophagus, if you feel it. So these should all resonate, even though there's esoteric ideas to it, it is still science. This is the way that our body works. Okay. Digestion begins in the mouth. When kapha dosha puts that your digestive enzymes into your food as you're chewing it up, and it starts digestion there. Kapha sends the food into the pitta dosha, where it's breaking it down with the fire of pitta and starting to absorb the minerals into your body, because that's what pitta does. It transforms. That's its job. And then it sends that food through your system down to the vata dosha, where your vata is finishing that processing and sending out what you don't need anymore. So we all have all three in us, but because of our elemental qualities, we are going to have a higher percentage of one versus another in our natural constitution as we were conceived. All right, I'm going to have to peek at my notes and make sure I'm not forgetting to tell you anything about this awesome slide, because this is just such great key elements, information. Okay. So a little bit more about the doshas. The vata literally translates to wind, and it's that which moves things. So it functions in the body as it's responsible for all motion. Sorry, my doorbell rang. It threw me off here. So that's what the vata dosha does. Its qualities, we see some qualities there. So what happens in the world, we go out of balance. When our vata dosha goes out of balance, the primary symptom is going to be pain, but we'll have other symptoms in line with the qualities, especially too much motion, because that's vata's thing, is moving things around. So we're going to have too much motion, and we're going to look for stable things to bring balance. Pitta is responsible for digestion. That's its function. It literally translates to the word bile. We see the qualities here, and the primary symptom when pitta goes out of balance is a fever, right? More heat. You're also going to see red eyes, heated organs. In the mind, I should actually discuss this for both too. In the mind, the secondary symptom for vata would be too much thought, overwhelm, anxiety. In pitta's mind, there's going to be intensity. It could be anger, high passion. Kapha literally means mucus, and it's that which holds things together. It's supportive, just like that. It's the force behind the structure and stability in the body. And so the primary symptom when things go wrong is swelling. It's building too much. Secondary symptoms, you're going to have excessive mucus. You're going to have weight gain because there's just too much gathering. Also in the mind, you're going to find that stubbornness, complacency, it can happen, discontentment. Well, actually, I think that's more vata, but just a lack of motivation. Like, yeah, I have the energy, but I'm just not into that. That's what happens when we get too much of our kapha going on. So, like I said, we all have a unique balance in our constitution as we were when we were conceived. And then time acts on us and the world changes us. And we also have a current state of the balance of doshas. Okay. So in Ayurveda, we want to find out what a person's constitution is at conception, and then also find out where they are right now so that we can work with where the doshas are, where they're having their imbalance, and bring it back into the balance according to the person's own constitution, which is a big deal about why Ayurveda is different than Western medicine, because it is so individualized. We're looking at treating the person where they are, how they need to be treated. It's not generalized for all females or everybody in this weight structure or everybody with this other size specific information. It's not like that. It's individual for each person according to your doshas. Right. Now, doshic body type presentations. Oh, what's that? Because of the elemental qualities, each dosha will present a certain way in the body. So if you think of the qualities of cold, dry, light, mobile, okay, they're going to present in the body in certain ways. So people that have more vata dosha in them are going to express with a more of an oval or a long face. Now, this is opposed to the kapha face, which is softer and rounder, because kapha it's more dense. Okay, so it's not going to be spread out like vata, where they're going to have longer neck, longer bones. Their fingers are going to be longer and narrow because they have that mobility. There's that length. Kapha, the opposite, short, thick fingers, shorter, thicker neck, bones. The skin is going to be thicker on a kapha, where thinner on a vata. Okay. And it's really obvious if you think of like a baby, you can feel how they have all that little thickness. And then like a grandparent, they tend to be thinner. Pitta dosha tends to be the dosha of moderation. So where the vata eyebrows will be thinner, the kapha will be bushier, the pittas are going to be more moderate. The neck will be medium. The fingers medium. Just the body structure is going to be pretty moderate. It'll be not too difficult to gain or lose weight for a pitta. But they also have this fire. So you're going to see a certain intensity in them. They're going to have, their face is going to be a little more intense. There's going to be a sharper angle to it, perhaps, maybe wider cheekbones. And the eyes will have more of a deep set, maybe a piercing quality to them. So you're going to see that fire. Pitta people, when you look at them, they engage your eyes. Vata people, they're softer. They're more subtle, is what I should say. The Vata people, they're not softer, they're more subtle. And they'll have more of a sharpness to them. The Kapha people, there's the softer people. They're the people that they just have like a nice moistness to them. So maybe think of those qualities for yourself. What resonates for you? And maybe you're thinking of people that you know in your world that you look at them and you just can't help but smile. People that are just so sweet and loving, or people that maybe you look at them and they're intimidating to look at. Maybe they have a lot of fire and they're very sharp. So maybe just kind of seeing how that resonates for you. So signs and symptoms of imbalances in the doshas are going to run according to what's going on. If you have more kapha dosha in your constitution, naturally, you'll be more likely to go out of balance this way, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way. A person who is high in kapha can have gas and constipation. They can have dry, cracked skin. It's not as likely, okay, because they will have different things going on in their nature. But it's always possible. A person with kapha can get a sunburn, okay? That is a pitta imbalance. a sunburn. Okay. So the Vata dosha, because of its qualities of dryness and mobility, will have more likely gas problems, constipation problems when they're out of balance. They're going to be more likely to have insomnia because there's that subtlety in their nature, that thinness, where Kapha is the opposite. They are the people who hit the snooze button 1,000 times. They are, they can go to sleep as soon as their head hits the pillow. Oh, I'm so jealous. But at the same time, it's hard for them to wake up in the morning. They have that heaviness and sluggishness in their digestion, where the pitta, it's going to be, they have that higher digestive fire. When they go out of balance, they're going to be more likely to have burning stool, loose stool. Okay. They're more likely to have heartburn too because of that heat. In the skin, the vata is dry. They're going to be more likely to have that cracked skin. The pitta is going to be more likely to be oily and have rashes, right? Red rashes. Again, this is not as esoteric here as it is just common sense. Okay. Body temperature, same idea. Vata is cold, pitta is hot. Kapha can put up with temperature change a little bit better because it's got a kind of an insulated nature. All right. And even in the mind, even in the emotions, the vata, we kind of touched on this before. Vata is going to be more likely to have anxiety because think of all that motion in the mind, that air, that movement. It needs to be grounded. Okay. The pitta dosha is going to have that anger, that heat. It needs cooling. And kapha dosha is going to be depressed. It's going to have that heavy emotion going on. And it needs lightness to balance it out. All right. So how are we on time? Oh, we're running great on time. So how does one learn their own doshic balance? Well, you have an Ayurvedic evaluation. When I was going through yoga teacher training, they barely talked about Ayurveda. I wish there had been more on the subject. But they talked a little bit about Ayurveda and they had us take a dosha quiz online. And you can do this. I think like Deepak Chopra has one on chopra.com. Banyan Botanicals has one, and they're okay. But what happened was when I took that evaluation, it told me that I was predominantly Vata dosha. And when I had an actual Ayurvedic, a true Ayurvedic evaluation, I found out that naturally I am high in Pitta. I've got about 50% Pitta dosha, about 30, high 30, low 40% Vata dosha, and very little Kapha, very little Kapha. And so the problem with the online dosha quizzes are that they don't get the full picture. They mostly understand where you are today because they're not looking at your body type, which is a huge key to your doshic balance. So an Ayurvedic evaluation, when I sit down with a patient, it starts with paperwork. I send them the paperwork first for them to fill out. And it includes the complete health history, surgeries, past medical history, familial health history, but that's definitely not the deepest focus. It also has information where I'm asking you about your physiology. When we meet in person after you fill out your paperwork and get it back to me, and I'll process it, and then we'll meet. I go over the paperwork with you. Every answer that you gave me, I'm going to ask you about it so that I really understand what you mean. Okay. This consultation is not brief and it is not superficial by any means. I examine the body structure of my patients, looking at the physical qualities that we already talked about, the eyes, the skin, the bones. I look at the hair, the ears, all of it. It's very in depth, and they're all just little brush strokes in the bigger picture of who my patient is. We do a pulse examination in Ayurveda where I'll feel for the elements in your pulse, and that gives me an idea of both your original nature, your original constitution, and your constitution of where it sits now, where your imbalances are. Same thing with the tongue examination. It's going to tell me a lot about your digestion. It's going to give me clues as to what's going on in your body, where you're holding tension, how well you're absorbing your vitamins and minerals, things like that. The physiology questionnaire, I should probably switch those around in explaining it. The physiology questionnaire is what is in your original intake paperwork that I would have my patients fill out. And it looks at long-term physiological tendencies and short-term tendencies and imbalances. So patients might come to me for a specific imbalance that they're having, like heartburn, for example, or they might just come in general because they want to be feeling better overall. They want to get their wellness in check. So we look at both how your body has wanted to run throughout its life and what's going on right now and why is it going on like that. What's really happening here? That's what that questionnaire is looking to get to the bottom of. We also want to understand routines and habits because it's what we do on a daily basis that truly determines our health and well-being. So I want to understand your waking habits and sleeping habits, your daily routines, where you eat food. I want to know about your commute to work or the lack thereof, because all of this stuff builds into you, builds into who you are, determines what you're doing with your life. So we want to know what's going on. Maybe you're getting into your own way on things. And that happens, right? We misuse our senses. Our intellect fails. Okay. We get wrapped up in the stress of time. So we need to really get nosy, get into all of your business when it comes to this evaluation. It's not a quick process. It's about a 2-hour visit. And that doesn't count the work that you do beforehand and that I do beforehand and the work that I do afterward, processing all this information so that I can get back to my patients within a week afterward with a report of findings. And that helps them to understand really what's going on with their doshic balance. We also want to understand current levels of satisfaction. So what's going on with your job? What's going on with your relationships? These are important because who can deny how a job will affect your well-being, how your relationship with your partner, your children, your parents will affect your well-being, okay? So all of this information has to be taken into consideration if we're gonna build a good plan to help bring a person back into balance, to bring them into greater well-being, into a greater feeling of svastha. That's what it's all about, the svastha. All right. My goals as an Ayurvedic health counselor is to understand that constitution. First of all, when I intake that paperwork and I'm going through and I'm processing, what I really want to understand, I'm counting up all the points, counting up all the brushstrokes to understand what's called the prakriti. And this is, again, how you were when dad's sperm met mom's egg, boom, and you were conceived. This is your balance of the doshas at that moment. This lets me know where we want to get you back to. Also, my goal, understanding the nature of your imbalances. They call this vikruti. This is the balance of your doshas right now. And it's not expressed as a percentage, but actually as a primary, secondary, and tertiary, because like I mentioned, the doshas are always cyclical. They're always rising, peaking, and retreating. So your imbalances are going to shift. Some are going to be stronger. Some are going to be there more frequently. But understanding the nature of the imbalances is going to help me get a plan to work with so I can bring you from your vikruti back towards your prakriti. It's not an easy process. It depends on how long you've been imbalanced as to how long it'll take us to get you back into balance, okay? It's all about the practices. Again, it goes back to that you being self-empowered to make your changes yourself. It's a practice of self-responsibility and conscious choice making. The healing tools of Ayurveda, besides that conscious choice making, are many. First of all, what I do is I do a lot of lifestyle counseling and support for my patients. And I love it. I just love being able to cheer people on, being able to do this research for people coming with some amazing questions, amazing questions. And I get to support them by doing research and finding out what's going to be most ideal for their doshas. I get to tell them about how their doshas work and teach them when your dosha is going out of balance this way, look to this way to balance it out. It's really about empowering people to to make their changes, and it's a beautiful thing to be a part of, a beautiful thing to watch. Excuse me, I'm getting a little choked up there. Yes, so the lifestyle counseling and support is key. It's key to have someone on your side, someone in your corner who believes in you, and yeah, and will just be there for you. It's so key. I don't know many doctors that are willing or able to do that. Another healing tool in Ayurveda is diet. Yeah, obviously. But it's not just what you eat in Ayurveda, it's how we eat. So, my teacher, Dr. Halpern, likes to say that he would rather you eat a hamburger and fries the right way than a salad the wrong way. And so, what that means is there's guidelines for healthy eating in Ayurveda. We want you to not only eat for your dosha, right? If you are high in pitta, for example, you have a lot of fire. We want you to eat cooling things to maintain and not flare up your fire. That's obvious stuff. But we also want you to eat without stress so that you can digest your food properly and completely. We want you to chew your food completely so that it digests completely, things like that. Ayurveda is huge on good digestion. Why? Because the doshas live in your digestive system. Disease starts in the digestive system when your doshas are out of balance. It's very subtle. You don't notice the disease at first. That's what it's about. So diet is very important in Ayurveda. Herbs. Herbs are the pharmaceuticals of Ayurveda. Okay. By cooking with herbs, your body is going to be able to do so much more digestion better. Your system is going to run better. We don't realize how key different herbs are in our diet. Fennel is huge for digestive disorders. If you ever have tummy troubles, make yourself some fennel tea. It's good for all the doshas. There's things that are specific to the doshas. Peppermint is good for some for tummy trouble. Ginger is better for other doshas for tummy trouble. So, of course, it all goes according to your dosha, but herbs are an indispensable tool of healing in Ayurveda. Sense therapies, also key, because what are we doing when we cause disease? We're misusing our senses. One of the things, anyway. So we bring healing to the senses with these sense therapies. Aromatherapy, good smells. You can use diffusers or flowers around the home. That's also good for color therapy, some beautiful flowers in the house. Skipping sound therapy, I'll get back to that. Different colors elicit different feelings in Ayurveda because colors are made of the elements as well. So, for example, gold has a little bit of all the elements in it. It's very balancing to all of the doshas. Green is also very balancing, not as balancing as gold because too much green can vitiate the pitta dosha. But that's why I decided to wear a green shirt today because I wanted people to feel balanced. Also, there's a little bit of black and white mixed in. White is about expansion. So I'm hoping to kind of expand your mind. And black is about, is the opposite. It's contracting, but it's like a line of demarcation. And so I want you to see that I'm drawing a line here in education. This is something different than what you already know. Yeah. So color therapy. Sound therapy. We bring prana into our ears. So sometimes we want to listen to The sound of the ocean, listening to chanting or mantras is sound therapy. Different kinds of music are going to balance your doshas too. So like Vata dosha, it needs stability. It can't handle heavy metal, where heavy metal might be good for a kapha dosha to get that kind of excited movement going. Touch therapy is important too. Massage. I just got back from a week-long trip to Nevada City to learn what's called Abhyanga, which is an Ayurvedic massage. It's warm oil, lots of warm oil, because oil is love in Ayurveda. And it's a technique that is specific for balancing the doshas and helping to clear out the lymphatic system. Plus, it feels great. Doesn't it feel great to get a touch, to get a hug? As long as they are wanted and harmonious, they're going to bring health back to the body. They're going to bring in healing. We also use purification techniques in Ayurveda. And so those are tongue scraping to get rid of ama off of the tongue, which is toxins. If you look at your tongue, you could probably see there's undigested food there. We wash our eyes out with rose water. We do neti potting. Okay, so different purification techniques to remove toxins in the body and to bring more harmony and balance. And then yoga, meditation are the healing tools of Ayurveda. How else can we quiet the mind? How else can we practice that present moment awareness? Yoga is a meditation for the body. I teach that to all of my students. When we're resting in a pose, you don't have time to start making a grocery list. You don't have time to sit there and judge yourself for what you did last summer. Okay, silly example, but that's not what the yoga practice is for. The yoga practice, when we sit in a pose, we're present. We're scanning the body from inside out. We are, if we're holding a pose, we're checking the muscles constantly. And all through that, we're mindfully maintaining the breath cycle. This is what quiets the mind. This is what brings healing to your nervous system. And this is what brings healing to your doshas. This is how we get out of the body's way. Because once we give the body the right support, it's going to heal itself. That's what it does. That's what it wants to do. We just got to get out of the way. All right. So what it's like seeing an Ayurvedic professional, like I mentioned, in the initial visit, it's 2-hour comprehensive evaluation. It's no joke. It's very nosy. And the more that you can share, the more of a good plan I can come up with. But it is very deeply personal. And I want to say that I am so grateful, so grateful. Oh, I am getting a little choked up, to all my patients that have shared their life with me. It's such a profound experience to be let in like I have been, and I am deeply grateful that that they have their trust in me, and I do everything in my power to maintain that trust and that love. So yeah, I'm really grateful. Okay, the second visit is a 1-hour report of findings. So we'll sit down and discuss the findings, what I understand to be going on with your doshas. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about your doshas and the plan to bring them back into balance so that you start being empowered right away, so that you start understanding fundamentally what's going on with you and how we're going to start bringing you back into balance. So at that visit, we set into motion your first therapies. I'll be making recommendations with every visit. Excuse me. Yes, I make recommendations with every visit, which are gentle awarenesses, gentle lifestyle modifications to start massaging you back into balance. Okay. Because it's not a fast or easy process. Okay. It can take years for someone to correct an imbalance. Some people, it might be fast. Many people start to see changes in their lives very quickly. And once they start to follow recommendations, and not like a magic wand, like, oh, I'm all healed, everything's perfect, but they'll start to see these shifts and say, and awarenesses and say, oh, okay, I can see how by me just doing this little thing. I'll give you one small example. Just by me drinking warm water with lemon when I wake up in the morning, just by doing that, I feel like it's easier for me to get my day going. I've got a little extra hydration, and it's easier to wake up. Just a silly example. So just by adding one little change, two little changes, people start to quickly notice that the practices are valid and and can cause the shift in a positive way that we need. Okay. It's a very gradual process. Excuse me. We also address any questions or concerns the patient may have because Ayurveda is deep. You just heard me talk about elements and doshas and all these funny Sanskrit words, and I really did try to keep it to a minimum. But questions can come up. People have concerns about all kinds of things. Will my medicines contradict any of this? How do I accomplish this? Whatever it is, we're going to discuss it and we're going to get to the bottom of it. And then I like to ask for follow-up visits with each of my patients. I always request weekly because that is where the best support lies and where we see the most success. Both when I'm teaching yoga students and with my Ayurvedic patients, I see the most progress in people. They will see the most progress when they come for regular weekly visits. Now, some people just can't make it weekly. I do have patients that come every other week. I do have patients that come every 3 weeks. Well, only one is coming every 3 weeks and is not seeing much progress, but is still continuing to come, which is good because they are looking to build that greater awareness. And I believe that they'll move forward. The follow-up visits are key for checking in on progress because we want to find ways over the obstacles and we want to celebrate successes. Okay. When you make a positive change and keep it in your life, yay, that's our win. We want to celebrate that. And if you're having trouble remembering to drink that warm lemon water in the morning, I'm there with my patients to find the ways over the obstacles. We're going to discuss, okay, well, is it valid? Is this something that you want to keep trying to do? The patient says, no, I don't want to do that. Then we'll move on to a different recommendation. If they say, yeah, I do want to try that. How can I remember to do that? I'll say, okay, well, since you want to keep trying it, since you understand why it's valid, why I want you to try it, how about if we put a reminder note on a sticky note on your phone? So when you wake up in the morning and check the time, boom, you remember. So it's about meeting a patient where they're at, finding a recommendation that works in their life so that they can create the change that they want. In the follow-up visits, we also look at the herbs that patients should be taking, making new recommendations that could do with all kinds of lifestyle changes. It could do with guidelines for healthy eating. It could be a recommendation for water intake, anything. It could be for getting a massage. I've made all kinds of different recommendations to patients. It just depends on what they need. Okay. A little quote here by Jay Marshall. It has been said that time heals all wounds. The truth is that time does not heal anything. It merely passes. It's what we do during the passing of time that helps or hinders the healing process. So, blank page. So thank you for being present, for listening to my introduction to Ayurveda. I am currently taking patients. I am also taking yoga students. And this is my information. If anybody needs to reach out, feel free to ask questions. I'd like to close with a quote from someone I consider to be my guru, BKS Iyengar. He's passed away, but before he left the planet, he left us with some wonderful quotes, many wonderful quotes. This one is probably my favorite of his. Change is something we should not fear. Rather, it is something that we should welcome. For without change, nothing in this world would ever grow or blossom, and no one in this world would ever move forward to become the person they're meant to be. Thank you, friends. Namaste.